Good morning. My name is Kelly Tomlinson. I work here at St. Mary's in the operating room. I would like to welcome you to our presentation this morning. April is National Donate Life Month. I'm going to share a few facts with you about the donation list. Currently, there are 119,000 people on the wait list nationally. 19 people die every day waiting for organs. Over 1,800 people are on Wisconsin's wait list alone. We have the opportunity over here at our table after the presentation to sign up on the donor registry list. We are here today to help promote organ, tissue, and eye donation, and to honor those donor families who have consented to donation and provide someone another chance at life. Mary Myskewitz is a donor mom from Blair, Wisconsin, who was faced with this very difficult decision. She is here today to share her story. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce Mary Myskewitz. Please join me in welcoming her.
Good morning. I stand here this morning very humbled and honored to be able to share my story. Please keep in mind that as I share this very personal story, that it is personal. I am not a professional speaker, but I am a mom. I am a donor mom. This is something that I am very, very proud of. My connection with organ donation is through my son, Rob, eternally 20 years old, just 3 weeks shy of his 21st birthday. Whenever I speak, I always wish that you could have met Rob instead of trying to understand him through me, his mother. He was a good kid, but he was a kid, and like anyone else, he had his moments. In comparison to his sister, he was our social butterfly, and he had his dad's sense of humor, and he was very tender-hearted. One of our favorite stories is of Rob being able to go Christmas shopping by himself at the school for our Christmas presents when he was only 6 years old. I will never forget that Christmas, getting this little box presented to me with his hands just shaking with the excitement of giving this most special gift. And when I opened it, here was those one-size-fits-all that you have to squeeze to fit onto your finger. Beautiful ring with a heart-shaped pink gem on it. He was so very proud and excited. But a few minutes later, he had to turn to his dad with tears in his eyes and say, "I'm so sorry, Dad, but I spent all of my money on Mom's beautiful ring, and I didn't have enough left over for you." That excitement of gift giving, that lasted all of his life. Rob was very family orientated. He loved family get-togethers, and after getting his driver's license, he was usually the first one to arrive at a family get-together and the last one to leave. He did well in school. He loved to debate, sometimes just for the sake of debating, and he was part of our school's basketball team that made it down here to the Cole Center for the state basketball tournaments. And his true passion he shared with his father, and that is of snowmobiling. But on September 13th, 2001, 4 days after breaking up with his girlfriend, 2 days after the terrorist attacks on the Twin Towers in New York City, 2 days before a big test that he was taking for the company he worked for, and just 2 very short hours after stopping at the clinic where I worked to tell me of his plans for the evening, our son Rob made the choice to end his life. Ron went home late that afternoon, just by chance, and found Rob. They figure about 5 to 10 minutes after he completed his suicide. Ron called 911, and being an EMT for the local ambulance service, I heard the page go out for a 20-year-old male down at 110 East 5th Street. So then begins our organ donation journey. I reacted as a mom and not as an EMT that day, and I could do no more than to hold my son and tell him that I loved him, even though the ambulance was parked right outside my front door due to the local festival being held that weekend. When my fellow EMTs arrived, they quickly transported him to our local hospital and called for a med flight, where they then flew him down to Gunderson Lutheran in La Crosse. We lived about an hour away from Gunderson, so by the time that we arrived there, Rob had been thoroughly evaluated and he was being ventilated. We were immediately ushered into the room that I knew as an EMT as the room of not good news, the family room. There, two very kind and compassionate doctors told us, "We are so very sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Myskewitz, but your son is brain dead, and there is nothing more we can do." My world went black. I remember feeling as if I had just been dropped into a very deep and dark void, and I was falling with no bottom to catch me. Nothing was registering, nothing was making sense. This was my son. This was my baby, and I was not supposed to be here. He had plans for the evening, and he had told me of those plans. But after a few minutes, they looked at us and again said, "Mr. and Mrs. Myskewitz, we are truly sorry. But have you ever considered organ donation?" We are forever grateful that those two physicians had the courage to face us in our grief and ask us about organ donation. You see, even though I worked in the medical field, and even though I had transported by ambulance a very dear friend to Madison for her transplant, we were not remembering that almost 4 years earlier to the date, that Rob had made the decision to be a donor when he got his driver's license. And more importantly, he had even told us of that decision to donate. But in that dark void, we, his family, we were not remembering that. So when these doctors asked us, we had just been given our very first gift. And we were able to answer as a family, yes, in unison. It truly was like a ray of sunshine in that void. See, Rob had not lived life long enough to leave a legacy. And now a part of his living self continues to live on through others. My son's life was not in vain. We were then ushered up to ICU, a great team of dedicated people. I cannot tell you how much it meant to Rob's family, clergy, and friends to see the respect that they showed to him and to us. They would always call him by name and explain everything they were going to do, even though technically he was gone. And even though in hindsight, I'm sure that most of the time we were in their way, they never made us feel that way that night. We met with the transplant team at about midnight of that evening, after they had received special permission to fly. Remember, there was still a no-fly order in effect due to the terrorism acts on the Twin Towers. And we live a good 3 hours away from Madison, so ground transport is not an option. Them getting permission to fly was a miracle in and of itself. This transplant team, they answered every question we had for them that night. And to this day, if I have any questions, all I have to do is call them, and they will answer my questions right away. I had only one request for them that night. I wanted to be called after the recovery was complete. I felt as a mom that my son was really not gone till the recovery was done. And at about 5 a.m., I received that phone call that as we were speaking, my son's heart was flying to its new home. We have been blessed to correspond with a gentleman that received one of Rob's kidney and pancreas. After his transplant, He has been able to go fishing with his dad and his brother in Canada again. Something Rob did with his dad several times. This gentleman has a passion for Harleys, something we put akin to Rob's passion for his skidoos. And then there is Chuck, Rob's heart recipient. About 10 days before our first anniversary of losing our son, we were able to meet this gentleman and his family. Chuck is tall, kind, and soft-spoken, just like our son Rob. And he let this mom listen to her son's heart beating again when he gave me the biggest hug. I cannot express to you how very healing that was. This past spring, we were able to be with Chuck and his family to celebrate the graduation of his twin sons, who were just 8 years old when Dad received his heart. What a celebration we had that day. But this past December, we received another phone call from Chuck's family. They were again asking us to come down to Madison and be with them to say goodbye to the man who I had spoken about donation with many times, who had become family, and to celebrate his life. And yes, they let this mom listen to her son's heart beating one last final time. But you see, we accomplished our goals. Chuck just so badly wanted to see his sons grow up into the fine young men that they have become. We are also very blessed to know that Rob's bone and tissue have helped in excess of 50 people. And his eyes, they're still seeing the world. Every family get-together, we celebrate our ray of sunshine, organ donation, by lighting a 5-wick candle. The 4 major organ donations he made, and the bone and tissue he was able to give. One more way we, Rob's family, try to let his love and light shine. As I reflected while preparing to speak to you today, it is with awe and wonder to where I have been, then and now, and the journey in between. I celebrate the friendships that Rob, through his organ donation, has given me. I celebrate speaking to you, even though it is difficult for this mom to stand before strangers and speak. Because I truly feel that everyone deserves, at the very least, the chance to make the choice on whether to donate or not. I'd like to leave you with one final parting thought. If you or your loved one needed an organ transplant to save and or prolong your life or your loved one's life, would you accept that gift? And if you would accept that gift, why not give the gift of life? Thank you.